Assalamu alaikum. My name is Maryam. Inshallah, I'll be explaining lung circulation. So we already know these, but I will say it for the sake of completion that when comparing systemic and pulmonary circulation, the biggest thing to understand is that they are designed for completely different jobs, so their pressure and their resistances are not the same. The systemic circuit must deliver blood to the whole entire body, so it naturally requires high pressure and high resistance to push blood through these long distances, while the pulmonary circuit, on the other hand, only needs to send blood like a few centimeters over to the lungs, so it operates on low pressure and low resistance. Another point you need to know is that cardiac output must be equal on both sides. If it isn't, you can have problems like pulmonary congestion, systemic collapse, blah, blah, blah. Bad things happen. So in order for the heart to keep up with this, there's something called a Frank-Starling mechanism that keeps both ventricles balanced. Okay, the next thing you need to know is that systemic arterioles are controlled via active control, which is just muscle contraction, and pulmonary vessels are controlled via passive control, which is external forces such as blood flow and pressure of other things. So if we were to divide this thing in half and we had systemic arterioles on this side and pulmonary vessels on this side, if we calculated the transmural pressure, we'd see that they're completely different. So we know transmural pressure, inside pressure minus outside pressure. So 100 minus 10, which is 90 millimeters of mercury. And if we were to do 14 minus 10, it would be 4 millimeters of mercury. Now let's say we had an increase of pressure on the outside. So we had plus 10 over here and we had plus 10 over here. If we were to calculate transmural pressure again, we would see that this would be 80 mmHg and this would be negative 6 mmHg. Inshallah, negative 6. I'm not really sure. Yeah, so the point is that we see that on the systemic arterial side, 80 mmHg is not that big of a deal. It's not that different from 90. It doesn't really do much. But this negative 6, this changed drastically. So all you need to know is that the pulmonary vessels, when there's a change in pressure and stuff, it affects it way more than systemic arterioles. Okay, now we have the Swan-Ganz catheter. I'm not really sure if you're supposed to know these numbers, but since the professor said it, I will be saying it for funsies. But we know that a catheter is a long tube. It has a little balloon at the end. Well, this one has a balloon at the end, and it has a pressure reader, whether it's in the front or the back, I'm not really sure, but it has a pressure reader. So this catheter enters, it goes to the right atrium. The pressure thing reads it. Oh, wow, created an arrow, sorry. Yeah, so the pressure thing reads it, and it'll see that it's 0 at systole and 4 in diastole. And then it will move further down into the right ventricle. The pressure thing will read it, and it'll see that it's 20 systole and 0 diastole. And because of these numbers, we know that we're in the right ventricle. Now the right ventricle will push up the catheter along with the blood, and we're going to enter the pulmonary artery. Now we're going to know we're in the pulmonary artery again because we have 20 in the systole and then 8 in the diastole. It's different now. So now that we're here and everything's lovely, we're going to inflate this balloon like that, and it's going to stop blood flow. What happens when we stop blood flow? Well, the blood will stop, and the pressure in it will equalize. And the equivalent of this pressure is equal to the left atrium pressure. So all you need to know is that the Swan-Ganz catheter measures left atrium pressure. Okay, now next, how pulmonary vascular resistance PVR changes with pressure. Okay, I want to clear up a concept before I explain the slide. We already know that in systemic arteries, when there's higher resistance, arteries will constrict in order to protect capillaries from excessive flow and pressure and stuff like that. But in pulmonary arteries, in the lungs, when arterial pressure increases from exercise and cardiac output increases and stuff, the resistance will actually go down. And why does it go down? Because of something called recruitment and distension. So we already took recruitment before. It's basically just when closed vessels open up, start carrying blood, start helping out and doing stuff in the lungs. And distension is just when the already open vessels widen and expand and just make more space for the blood. That's all you need to know for the slide. Okay, so next we have two types of pulmonary vessels. Yeah, so Pulmonary vessels fall into two major categories, each reacting differently to lung volume changes. So extra-alveolar vessels, which lie outside the alveoli, are influenced by pleural pressure. When lung volume increases during inspiration, pleural pressure becomes more negative, which increases their transmural pressure. So now, pleural pressure becomes more negative, increases transmural pressure. What will this do? It will make the vessels expand, and it will decrease resistance. Just know it decreases resistance. Extra-alveolar vessels. On the other hand, alveolar capillaries are embedded within the alveolar walls themselves. They're like over here. So when you inspire, these will actually blow up like a balloon. And it will put a lot of pressure on these capillaries. That will compress them, and their radius will get smaller, and that will increase resistance. Yeah, sorry about that, but what you need to know is that extra-alveolar vessels, they dilate during inspiration, and alveolar capillaries constrict during inspiration. So these are opposites, of course. So who wins this little battle of tug and war? Basically, they just meet in the middle at this place called FRC, which we've taken before in previous lectures. And all you need to know is that PVR is lowest at FRC. And we can see also by the graph that if you were to go left or right, the FRC would increase. So you can have this condition called COPD. I don't actually know what that stands for, but it is a thing. And what this does is it increases FRC. It makes it higher. So whether that's like over here, it doesn't really matter. What that will do is that it will create a higher resistance in the blood. And higher resistance means higher blood pressure. And high blood pressure means hypertension. But since we're in the lungs, we're going to call it pulmonary hypertension. And this will induce right ventricle hypertrophy, and then that will make a thing called cor pulmonale. So you'll see in questions, they'll just like describe symptoms of cor pulmonale. They'll tell you it's cor pulmonale, and they'll say like what's going on here, and you're going to say that the PVR is low, and that no, you're not going to say that. You're going to say that the FRC became higher FRC, cor pulmonale. Okay, so we have hypoxia. What's hypoxia? Cia is just oxygen, and hypo is low. When we have hypoxia, this inhibits potassium channel. And obviously, these potassium channels will allow potassium to leave the cell to make the cell more negative. But since these channels are inhibited, the cell will be less negative, which will cause depolarization. Depolarization will cause the calcium channels to open. Now, calcium is just a trigger for arterioles to vasoconstrict. So over here, the artery will vasoconstrict over here. And I'll explain this in a little bit more depth in this slide, but focusing on this right now, the professor was really stressing on the fact that hypoxia in the systemic circulation and hypoxia in the pulmonary circulation are completely different. When we have hypoxia in the systemic, all the vessels will start dilating in order to like bring more blood and to bring more oxygen to like the tissues. But in the lungs, it will actually vasoconstrict, and the purpose is to redirect blood to well-ventilated alveoli. Now, what does this mean? Sorry, excuse me. Our vessels and our alveoli are always trying to like match each other. So we have an alveolus here, and we have one over here as well. Sorry that the thing is low quality, but it's okay. In this alveoli, we don't have any ventilation. There's no oxygen going into the alveoli. So that means the O2 will go down, and the CO2, because like there's still blood flowing in, the CO2 is still getting dropped off, so there's higher CO2. Okay, so this low amount of oxygen will trigger the blood vessel to vasoconstrict. That's the first thing that happens. So we see that perfusion goes down, ventilation goes down first, so then perfusion will also go down. Now on this alveoli, we see that ventilation working perfectly fine. But this blood vessel is actually blocked, so there's no blood going to it. So we have no perfusion. Carbon dioxide, there's going to be no carbon dioxide going into the alveoli, so it's going to decrease. And eventually, like the pressures of the oxygen and the carbon dioxide inside this alveoli and outside, is alveoli correct? Is that a correct term? Am I like saying that wrong? Inshallah khair. and the pressure outside is going to equalize. So that means the carbon dioxide will actually go down and the oxygen will increase. So over here, you're going to have hypoxic and hypercapnic. So hypercapnic, that just means CO2 increase. CO2, and then this is a lot. Low, high, yes, high CO2. So all I need you to understand from this slide is that, let me erase everything so I can say it. If this is broken, this will vasoconstrict. If this is broken, this will also vasoconstrict. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. Why does it do that though? Like, why do we not want to send blood over to these alveoli that don't be working? It's because if they're not working, they're not really going to give us any benefits. So the blood wants to go elsewhere into alveoli that actually work, that can actually help us. So that's all you need to know, is that the alveoli, the blood vessels, they will try to match each other in ventilation and perfusion. Now we have the lungs. Wow. So we know that gravity is a thing and it does work. And because of this, we actually have different pressures in different parts of the lung. We have the first zone, the second zone, and the third zone. And in the first zone, I'll just start from the very beginning. Actually, no, I'm gonna say what hydrostatic pressure is if you forgot it. It's basically just like the pressure in fluids. So like if you had like a cup of water, the pressure in the bottom of the cup would be more than the pressure at the top, because like all the fluid is like just pressing down at the bottom of the fluid. So yeah, just know that hydrostatic increases as you go down. It works the same exact way with the lungs. Let's start with the alveolar pressure. Because we're at the very top, the alveolar pressure will be a lot more, because like all the blood is going down to the third layer of the lung. So there's not much blood here, so the pressure isn't that high, and the alveolar pressure is just exceeding it 100%. And it can either like stop flow, or there's like very minimal flow. So you see like alveolar pressure is greater than arterial and venous. Now in the second zone, we have the arterial pressure greater than the alveolar pressure and the venous pressure. So what does this do? It means the arterial will be fine and dandy, it'll like flow through easily, but towards like the venous part, the alveolar part will kind of just like, compress it just a little bit. Like the flow will be less, but it'll still flow. That's what you need to know. And then here at the bottom, everything is greater than the alveolar pressure. So now it's just going to be flowing very, very easily. And this slide just kind of tells you all of that. This is like the osmosis video, by the way. So if you search osmosis, this will come up for you. So that's all you have to know. Now, the last slide, the final slide, we have right to left shunts. So what's a shunt? It's just a pathway that redirects fluid. We have normal shunts, and then we have abnormal shunts. The normal one is the physiological shunts that everyone has, like the Thebetian veins, the bronchial circulation. So what the Thebetian vein does, okay, I'm pretty sure it takes blood from the myocardium to the left ventricle. And why does it do that? It's because like the blood or the heart also needs oxygen. So, okay, I just won't say that part. But yeah, we have the Thebetian veins and we have the bronchial circulation. And what it does is it drains deoxygenated blood into oxygenated areas. So this will drain it into the left ventricle, and this will drain it into the pulmonary vein. Okay? And you might be thinking like, oh my God, deoxygenated blood mixing with oxygenated blood, like whatever will we do? It's actually not that serious. It's small, it's harmless, and everyone has them. We have these two shunts. Now for abnormal ones, pathological shunts, we took them in embryology when we have a ventricular septal defect or an atrial septal defect. That's way too much deoxygenated blood and oxygenated blood mixing, so it will cause way too many problems, and yeah, bad things happen. The final point I want you to take from this lecture is that these bring, So in a perfect, happy world, we would have equal arterial oxygen partial pressures and alveolar oxygen partial pressures. But because of these two shunts, the arterial partial pressure will actually just be a little bit lower. It's not that bad. It's not that serious. Again, it's okay. It's just a fact for you to know. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Assalamu alaikum.